Yeah, I think because of spring break, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I so now my screen's visible, I'm audible, and the recording's on. Okay, we'll get started. Verse number 16. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati haryah agayur indriya ramo mogam partha sajivati. So having explained, how the absolute truth resides in the acts of sacrifice, now Krishna is saying, my dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in the human life the cycle of sacrifice, which is thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin, living only for the satisfaction of the senses. Such a person lives in vain. So here it is. So it seems Krishna is making a strong statement over here. A couple of interesting words in Sanskrit, if you look at it. So this is established, pravartitam. That means, in Hindi also we find this word, pravartit, meaning that something that is happening or it's already it's a custom that is established, but it's not established whimsically, it's established by the Vedas. And chakram means cycle. So what is the cycle of sacrifice? Well, when the sacrifice is done, right, what happens? The rains facilitate grains, right? So rain and grain, similar sounding words. But from the grains, again, further we offer sacrifices. Again, the rain comes, right? So the entire cycle continues in that fashion. That is chakram. But one is not engaging, anu vartayati. So anu means following the footsteps of the parampara, because this is already happening through generations. It's like Krishna, as he was growing up, being raised in a family of Vaishyas. Nanda Maharaj was every year he used to perform the sacrifice for Indra. So anuvartayati means adopt. So what happens? Well, agha ayu means life, and agha means full of sins. So they are simply living a sinful life. Apparently it might seem that they are enjoying, right, sense gratification. So it's an interesting word that's used over here. Krishna uses indriya, which is senses. Arama means leisure, right? You just leave cozy, comfortable life, right? I think that's what the predominating worldview is, right? That somehow or other, if we have enough money, then we live a comfortable life. But the scriptures, they say that by living a comfortable life, when we are pursuing the sense gratification, right, that sense gratification, indriya arama, is available in all species of life, right? So eating, sleeping, mating, defending, those four things are available in all species of life. Even dogs and hogs, they enjoy it. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam says. Sometimes scripture, they use a strong statement just to kind of bring us to attention, right? So Srimad Bhagavatam says that even stool-eating hogs, they have the same kind of enjoyment. That's why Rishabhadev, who is the father of Bharat Maharaj, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, in that incarnation, with the Jains, they worship him as Adinath, or the original Tirthankar. But he is Vishnu avatar, right? So he said to Bharat, so the Bharat Varsha is named after Bharat Maharaj, that one should perform, the human life is rare, right? Instead of working hard to enjoy sense gratification, one should instead perform austerities. And austerities means it's not luxurious, it's not indriya arama, right? And why perform austerities? Because austerities will purify you, right? Suddham, what is it? It's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, can't remember. Vavid Varos, no, that's a different verse. Yeah, it says basically that one should perform austerities by which one can purify the senses in this human life and achieve the highest perfection of life. That is the essence of the instructions of Kapila Dev to his son Bharat Maharaj. Otherwise, life is waste, mogam, useless. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying a similar idea that the Mammonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification. Right. So in the contemporary times, the way it goes is, well, work hard and party harder. Right. It's a similar concept. So this philosophy is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, those who want to enjoy this material world, right, because the desire for enjoyment is there. Well, that could be done on a dharmic platform. And what is a dharmic platform? Well, what is the adharmic platform? The adharmic platform is you do not recognize that there is a higher authority who is providing all the supplies. And because that recognition is not there, we engage in thievery. And since we consider ourselves the proprietor and there is no recognition of higher authorities, and there is no question of sacrifices. So the yagyas are not performed. So this is sense enjoyment, which is without wanton, right? It's unrestricted, engaging in sinful activities. So this is condemned. Rather, if the desire for sense enjoyment might be them, one should do it on the platform of dharma. At least initially, that's not the highest purpose of the Vedic literature, but one can begin there. And what is that? One has to perform yagyas, right? So one comes on the platform of dharma. But one who is not acting on such a platform of dharma, then one is actually acting in a very risky life. Eventually, by acting on the platform of dharma, one will come to the platform of knowledge. That is the ultimate goal. And then when one comes to the platform of knowledge, earlier they don't know why they are doing, what is the real reason. We discussed this at length in second chapter. But when they know the real reason is to satisfy Vishnu, then they will act, but now their consciousness is changed. They are not acting for sense enjoyment, right? They are acting as a matter of duty for satisfaction of Vishnu, and then they really understand what is the purpose of yajna. So yajna is not, it's not like a transaction, a business transaction. Well, I give something and I get something in return. Earlier, one might have that kind of mentality because of limited understanding. But when it comes to the proper understanding, one understands the real purpose of yajna. So by nature's law, human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization. And it can be achieved in one of the three ways, right? So karma yoga, jnana yoga, or bhakti yoga. There is ashtanga yoga also. But anyway, karma yoga and jnana yoga in its real sense, they are not different from bhakti yoga. These are the limbs. So bhakti yoga means serving the Lord. So how do you serve? Well, serve the Lord by action, by your mind and your intellect. So jnana yoga is buddhi yoga, right? Karma yoga. So karma yoga is buddhi yoga. So buddhi yoga means it comprises both jnana and karma. First, you have the proper understanding, and then one acts on according to that, right? So in real sense, buddhi yoga is understanding and application of understanding, right? So both of them are included. And when one acts for the satisfaction of Vishnu, right, as a yajna, right? So then the karma yoga, jnana yoga, which is then they are the part of bhakti yoga, right? And ashtanga yoga is meditation. Well, who are we meditating on? Ashtanga yoga, the purpose is again to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the real sense, karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, they are all limbs of bhakti yoga. But because of perverted understanding, because we have this conditioning from millions of births, the materialistic understanding, we bring it even to spirituality, right? And when karma yoga has a material understanding, it becomes karma kanda, where one is not performing karma for the satisfaction of Vishnu according to one's nature. Rather, one is attracted by the flowery language of the Vedas and wants Janma, Aishwarya, Shruta, Shribir, all these opulences in this life. Then Jnana Yoga, when it is done with proper understanding, which is Sankhya Yoga, proper understanding, one can understand how the material world is working. And you can, by analytical study, and you can understand the energies of the Lord, and you can understand the position of the soul and the super soul, the relationship between soul and super soul. So in Vaishnava philosophy, also we have Vishishta Dvaitvad, of Sri Sampradaya, Dvaita Dvaitvad is there. Then you have Suddha Advaitavad, right? And Achintya Veda, Vedas. So all they are Vaishnava philosophies, but these are all Jnana, part of Jnana Yoga, you can say in a way, because there is a discrimination between soul and super soul, Atma, Paramatma, what is the relationship, all this is analyzed. So, but when the understanding is material, then the Jnana Yoga waters down or gets perverted into what we call Jnana Kanda or the Jnanis, because Jnanis, they are not interested in serving the Lord, they just want liberation, right? They're thinking that just by, if I have this knowledge, and by having that proper knowledge, I'll become one with Brahman and achieve impersonal liberation, right? So that is the wrong understanding of Jnana, right? One does not pursue that path properly, then it becomes Jnana Kanda. Similarly, Ashtanga Yoga. So Ashtanga Yoga is what? One achieves 8 mystic perfections, right? Anima, Lagima, which is, one can become lighter than the lightest, heavier than the heaviest. One can, whatever thing they desire in the world, in the universe, immediately they can get it, achieve it. One can transform from one place to another place in the world just by thinking, right? One can control others, right? So all these different mystic, there are 8 mystic powers. They are actually byproducts, because what happens is when one a yogi goes in trance and meditates on Paramatma, on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes one with God, not in the sense that one merges with the Lord, but they acquire the same nature as the Lord. It's the same potency as the Lord. Just like you put an iron rod in fire, the iron rod becomes fiery, acquires a fiery nature, right? Red hot, we call it red hot iron, right? So the real Ashtanga yogis, they are actually also Bhakti yogis. They are not interested in mystic opulences, but that actually, those mystic opulences are natural byproducts, because they acquired the nature of the Lord. They also acquired the potencies of the Lord, because all these potencies they naturally reside. But when so-called transcendentalists approach this with a perverted understanding, and they take up Ashtanga Yoga, and they think, oh, by Ashtanga Yoga I'll achieve all this mystic abilities, right? So they're interested in mystic abilities. They're not really interested in acquiring the absolute nature of the Lord. So in the way Ashtanga Yoga is also corrupted. But in its real sense, all these yogas, they are actually part of Bhakti Yoga. So that is very, very important distinction between Karma Yoga and Karma Kanda, Jnana Yoga and Jnana Kanda, right? So Yoga means linking with the Supreme. And Kanda means, there are different sections of the Vedas, right? The sections of the Vedas, there are, just to attract people, there's flowery language used. You do this, you get this result, right? So the fruitive description in the Vedas, it deludes people, and they don't come to the proper understanding. But ultimately, there are just different mechanisms or ways to perform devotion. Okay. Now there is a higher truth which Srila Prabhupada is explaining. He says there is no necessity of rigidly following performances of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue. Right. So this is when one has achieved transcendental state. Sometimes when we read this, because if we are practicing Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga for some time, then we think, oh, this is referring to us. And, we might imagine that, we are already above vice and virtue, right? But those who really have achieved that perfection, right, for them, there is no obligation that, they have to follow the rules and regulations of scriptures. By their sweet will, they might still continue to do that, to set an example. But, they are not required. Just like when a child is learning how to ride a bike, the guardrails are provided, right? What are the guardrails? Well, you have the training wheels, right? The training wheels, they have a utility. But when one has learned how to balance, then, the training wheels, they become an obstruction. Instead of utility, it becomes an obstruction. But if you prematurely give it up, then one will fall down. So similarly, the rules and regulations, they are meant to bring up gradually to the proper level so that we can achieve that transcendental position. And once one has achieved, then there is no necessity of rigidly following all the yajnas. But until then, so Arjuna, why is Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita? Otherwise, Krishna would have said, Arjuna, hey, no, you don't need to act. You could give up. Arjuna is emphasizing, no, you have to rigidly follow, right? Because you have not achieved that transcendental state. So you have to see in what context one understands his instruction, right? So different instructions for different people. But here, see, but those who are engaged in sense gratification, you have still some desire for sense enjoyment, right? We cannot say you're completely beyond it. So that's why this purification method of yajna performances is recommended, right? But what Srila Prabhupada has expedited that, so it says you don't have to wait to achieve that perfection to take up devotion. One can simultaneously take up devotional service, right? But at the same time, we have to continue with our purification, right? Because we cannot chant like Haridas Thakur 24 hours a day, Hare Krishna. We cannot just sit in. As soon as we say we have a job or work that we are doing, right? That means that even if someone chants 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, right? No one's going to be able to chant 8 hours every day, but we work 8 hours. So if you think in terms of how much time we devote way more time in actually working, and which is required just to maintain the body, and also not just maintain the body, but even if we had the opportunity, we did not have to work. It's very difficult to find people who would be able to just sit and chant for 8 hours, or just do spiritual activities. I'm just gonna chant Hare Krishna 8 hours, or I'll do 4 hours chanting, 4 hours reading Bhagavatam, right? So if someone is able to do it, right, then that's a different story. But most people, we cannot do it, right? So by nature, we have vritti to act, which is what Krishna is going to explain in verses further down. Because we have vritti to be engaged, then why we have to waste that opportunity, right? Because that can also be used in the service of the Lord, right? So that's the whole idea of karma yoga. For most people, you cannot just sit and chant all day, right? We have to work, and so when we are doing work, better do that work according to one's nature, and then offer the results to the Lord as sacrifice, and that work also becomes devotional service, right? And one is not implicated in the sinful reaction. So that is the entire process. That's why Prabhupada called this Krishna consciousness, which is the name again of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His sannyas name was Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Chaitanya means consciousness. Krishna Chaitanya. It means we have to change our consciousness. We don't have to make drastic changes to our life, right? Of course, we have to stop sinful activities if one is engaged in certain abominable activities, and that has to be stopped. Otherwise, one need not make drastic changes to one's social or economic positions or the lifestyle, but what has to change is the consciousness, right? So that is the essence of it. And when that consciousness is changed, and we are not doing with a fruitive mentality, we are doing with a mentality of performing yajna. So the yajna system is planned in such a way that the sensory conscious person, see, Prabhupada uses the word sensory conscious in contrast to Krishna conscious. So what is changing? Consciousness is changing. Instead of we are thinking of satisfying our senses, we have to start thinking how we can satisfy Krishna's senses. Right? So yajna system is planned in such a way that a sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without being entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. How? Well, one partakes in the remnants of offerings to Krishna. Right? So when we offer results of our work, means what? We are offering to Krishna whatever is left over, we use it for us. Right? In the sense that the first use is for Krishna's service, and then we take the leftovers. So that becomes like bhoga or sacrifice. What happens in yajna, right? Even when we offer different dravyas, we offer first dravya in the homam, and then the left, and the remnants is what we take in prasadam. Same concept. The results of the work offered to the Lord, then the results are purified. right? So the same key, the same concept, just like bhoga is offered. Same thing, result of the work. We offer it to the Lord, then we get purified, right? The remnants then we can take. So the prosperity of the world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. The demigods are the agency by which Lord executes different administrative affairs of the universe, just like the president through different governors and different members of the Senate and cabinet, they execute the administration of the country. Therefore, yajnas are directly aimed at the particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajnas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious, right? So in the initial stage, one might not understand that who the beneficiary of the yajna is, right? But when one is sincerely performing the yajnas, one will begin to question and come to the proper understanding. That understanding will naturally come. That once that inquisitiveness will come, then there is guru, there is sadhu, there is shastras. From that we will get the answers. So what is the real reason for performing yajna? That happens in the natural course, right? Just I've seen this example so many times. The child, when he's instructed to do something, the child does not know for what purpose I am doing, what I am going to achieve by that, what is the means, how exactly it will happen. No clue, right? But by doing that over and over again, eventually the child will come to that understanding once that matures. Or if you take up a new work, like that, they start a new job, it's a new domain, right? So I do not understand everything fully, right? But I know there is a cadence and there are certain things are happening. So I just have to get involved myself and absorb and understand. And eventually, just by experience and maturity, I will come to the understanding of why this is being done, right? Right now, initially, this needs to be done. I don't have the full appreciation of the purpose, right? But then, as one becomes mature, their understanding comes. So somehow or other, one has to come to that understanding. Because if one does not come to that understanding, then that effort is waste. So here, in the next line, Srila Prabhupada is saying, well, if by performing yajnas one does not come to that proper understanding, one does not become Krishna conscious, then such principles are counted only as moral codes, which is good, right? But morality in itself will not lead to transcendence. One has to transcend moral as well as immoral codes, right? Because but the thing is, morality gives us a good platform from which we can transcend it. It's very difficult to transcend something from an immoral, right, state. So at least from immoral we come to morality, but we have to transcend morality also, because both morality and immorality both bind us in karma, and we have to come back again to enjoy or suffer, right? Enjoyment means if we are getting rewards for our moral activities, that means you have to accept another body. Therefore, one should not therefore limit his progress only to the point of moral codes. One has to transcend them to maintain Krishna consciousness. This is the sum and substance of this particular verse. Anyone has any questions? Okay. Verse number 17. Yasva atma ratireva syad atmatriptascha manavah atmani eva cha santustas tasya karyam na vidyate. Translation. But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and one who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. So now Krishna is explaining the other end of the spectrum. What is the one end of the spectrum? Well, people who do not engage in the cycle of yajna, right? Now that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is those who actually realize the self, right? They take pleasure in the self, and they have no other purpose except self-realization. They are fully satisfied. For them, there is no need for duty. Later, Krishna will explain, though there is no need for duty, they might still do it. Just to set an example, but they don't have any obligation, right, to follow those duties. Of course, there is a middle ground also, right, where people, the moral codes that we talked about, well, one is not fully realized, and one is not completely adharmic either, right? So the middle stage or phase is where one is engaged in the practice of sacrifice. One has taken up devotional service. One is cultivating that proper understanding. At least one theoretically knows that this is for the satisfaction of Vishnu, and is engaged in the process of sacrifice or offering the results of one's birth. Okay, so that is the middle ground. But here now Krishna is talking about the other end of the spectrum. The purport Srila Prabhupada explains that a person who is fully Krishna conscious and is fully satisfied in his acts in Krishna consciousness no longer has any duty to perform. Right? Why? Well, due to his being Krishna conscious, all the impiety within is instantly cleansed, and effects of many thousands of yajna, which is an effect of many thousands of yajna performances. So, by taking up devotional service at the same time, it's a faster process, right? It's not a slow process. Otherwise, one has to perform yajna. So after a long duration of time, one will at least theoretically come to the understanding that, oh, actually Vishnu is for Vishnu. The real reason is to satisfy Vishnu. Then one might take up the worship of Vishnu. Here, Srila Prabhupada is saying one did not wait for that. You can simultaneously take up the devotional service or bhakti of Krishna. When I say bhakti, what does it mean? Bhakti means direct service of the Lord. Shravanam, right? Listening about the glories of Krishna. Kirtanam, talking about the glories of Krishna. Vishnu Smaranam, remembering him, right? By performing japa. Pada Sevanam, that means doing deity worship, right? Archanam, again, serving the lotus feet of the Lord. Archanam is doing deity worship. Archanam, Vandanam, bowing down to the Lord. Dasyam, that means one considers oneself as a servant of the Lord. And Sakyam, which is much more intimate relationship, right? One considers Lord as one's friend. And Atma Nivedanam means fully surrender to the Lord. So in that, one can dress the deities, offer nice bhoga. So, this is direct devotion to the Lord. At the same time, one should not give up the acts of sacrifice because we are still working, right? And so that work is there, right? We are not fully liberated. But what happens is because we are taking up that process of direct bhakti, right? We quickly burn the sinful reactions or in the karmic reactions of many lifetimes, right? At the same time, we also engage in the acts of sacrifices, not with a fruitive mentality, but for satisfaction of the Lord, right? So both process continue simultaneously. By such clearing of consciousness, so see, again comes back to the same point. All that needs to change is consciousness. One becomes fully confident of one's eternal position in relationship with the Supreme. His duty thus becomes self-illuminated by the grace of the Lord. What does that mean? Right? Well, it's explained in the second part of the sentence. Therefore, he no longer has any obligation of the Vedic injunction. So, what it means is that the earlier one might not have proper understanding of why one is doing, for what reason. Right? But when that understanding is illuminated by the mercy of the Lord, and one has achieved perfection, right? That is also required. It means one is no longer materially motivated, doesn't have any other obligation. One is beyond the dualities, right? Beyond honor, dishonor, comfort, discomfort, pleasure, displeasure. One is beyond all the dualities. One has achieved it. One has achieved perfection, then one doesn't have any obligations to Vedic injunction. Such a Krishna conscious person is no longer interested in material activities. See, such a Krishna conscious person. Not all. Those who are actually also practicing Krishna consciousness, but they're still not there yet, right? That's a different category. But when one has achieved perfection, right? And then they are no longer interested, right, in material activities. And they no longer take pleasure in material arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuations. So this part, actually, one can actually make progress in these areas, even when one is in the middle phase, right? One is theoretically understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God and everything should be done for the satisfaction. One is engaging in the cycle of yajna for satisfaction of Krishna or Vishnu. Just by taking up that, all the lower propensities are immediately gone, right? One might have some others, not grossly sinful desires, but some other desires just to live while especially one is in Grihastha ashram. But slowly, all kind of material desires will go away. And when one is fully Krishna conscious, then there is no inclination to be or the obligation to engage in Vedic injunction. Neither is there an inclination, right? So it's a gradual process. Any questions on this particular verse?
Prabhuji, the first sentence here that Prabhupada says, a person who is fully Krishna conscious and is fully satisfied by his acts in Krishna consciousness no longer has any duty to perform. I know Prabhupada is not saying that a Krishna conscious person does not need to do anything, but then what is he trying to say here when he says no longer has any duty to perform?
Yeah, no longer has any duty to perform. What it means is it's specifically referring to the prescribed duties according to one's varna. So in varnashram or Aryan society, that is obligatory that one has to perform one's varna's duty. Why? By performing, one will slowly, gradually come to the proper consciousness that everything is for the satisfaction of Vishnu. So one at least theoretically comes, and then when it continues to do, perform those activities, right, in an obligatory way, as a sense of duty, right, without any fruitive motivation. Earlier, the motivation is there, and then there is no fruitive motivation. One is continuing to do it, and then one eventually will come to the proper perfection, right, where the material desires are completely gone, and the only desire is to serve the Lord, right? But the middle stage is one theoretically knows that this is meant for satisfaction of Krishna or Vishnu, but the material desires are kind of still lingering. They are not grossly sinful, right? But some desire for sense enjoyment is there. So that's why one continue to act, right? But slowly it goes away. But when one achieves perfection, right, then there is no one has only desire to serve Krishna. So at that level, one is one won't be forced back to come to the material platform, right? According to that one's nature, the nature is there, right? When I say Kshatriya, Brahmana, Vaishya, all that nature is not, it is there, but more than that, what is prominent, that is subsided and overcome by the primary desire to serve the Lord. And so there is no duty left for that person to perform the duties of one's varna, right? Now, in that state, there are two options. One is pravritti marg and nivritti marg. One still continues to do it to set an example, right? Or one completely renounces, and then one just simply takes up devotional service of the Lord, right? The 9 process of devotional service. Without that means now you can sit and chant. Okay, when do you know how you're ready? I think that's what you're trying to get to. It's the same which I said. Well, we can, sometimes we have, a holiday, right? Somebody arranges for your food. There is nothing to do, right? I mean, you have all your time with you. Still, we cannot sit and chant 24 hours. We cannot sit and just like Parikshit Maharaj. We cannot sit and listen to Srimad Bhagavatam 24 hours a day, right? But when one has reached that stage, right, when one is not, we need some engagement. After some time, we'll say, no, I have to do this work. I need to do some work. I just cannot sit and chant. I cannot just sit and listen to Bhagavatam, right? Because that is our nature. By our nature, we are forced to a certain kind of engagement, right? As long as that force brings us back to it, we have an obligation to perform our duties. But we can use it in service of the Lord, right? But when that is no longer existing, what you call the force, which we could, now I can sit and chant all day, right? I can read Srimad Bhagavatam all day, right? Then there is no longer an obligation to perform duty. Does that make sense?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, somebody might have already achieved that level, right? Well, one can sit and chant 24 hours, right? It might not happen so often, right? And you can say, in a way, it's not impossible, but it's rare. But maybe that person still has family obligation, right? Maybe the children are not fully grown up. Maybe they have daughters to get married, or they make sure the son is well established. And so one, in an obligatory way, one continues to perform duty, though he is not obliged to do it. But when he sees, now they are settled, no longer, then I can sit and chant all day, then one does it. So the idea is, during brahmachari ashram, one learns how to obey orders, one follow rules and regulations, respect teachers. Then in grihastha ashram, one tries to maintain all the other varnas. The grihasthas have to maintain brahmacharis, grihasthas have to maintain vanaprastha, they have to maintain sannyasis, and they are engaging in the acts of sacrifice. If they are religiously doing everything, and by maturity and by law of diminishing returns, then the taste for sense enjoyment naturally will go away. Just by old age it does not go away, but because that is combined with action in Krishna consciousness, in the acts of sacrifice, by understanding philosophy, right? The senses become older. It's not then one can easily take up, one who understands the higher purpose of life, like a simple life. Maybe they go on pilgrimage, live simply, live in a holy place, right? And then one is able to engage in Krishna conscious activities. They might not do 24 hours, but even in the dream, they won't have dreams which are imbued with different desires, right? It's more on a sattvic platform. Body needs some rest. The person might still sleep, but one is pretty much engaged in the service of the Lord. So that's when one is ready, right? There is no longer any. The idea is, by the time, if we are doing things right, then by what time we are in Vanprasth, then we should aspire to be at this level, right? That we otherwise, if one is not cultivating grace, this consciousness properly, what happens many times, people retire, and when they retire, it's like a big shock to them. He says, suddenly, what should I do now, right? And they are missing. I would rather work. So see what has happened. Because one is not engaged in those acts of sacrifice, not cultivating philosophy, not cultivating Krishna consciousness, then that the gradual progression, the whole purpose of yajna, which is meant to bring us to that level, one has not gone through the transformation. So even at 65, 70, they feel, maybe I should take up a role of a consultant, right? Because I have so much experience in domain knowledge. I take up some side gig, or you continue to read journals of their domain. They would comment on Twitter, post messages. They are no longer in the industry, but they still, right? So what happened? The mind is so surcharged with this. They never came to the platform of transcending it. But if we do things right, it should bring us to that. And then there is no obligation to perform duty. Right? So I don't know if does that answer your question.
Yes, Prabhuji. It also reminds me about a lecture I was listening about chapter first canto, chapter 13, I think, of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Dhritarashtra leaves home, and how Vidura was trying to convince him that you think that you are living the life of a king, but you are not. You are just being served by by the sons of Pandavas. So this is very similar.
He uses harsh words to bring him. He says,
yes,
Bhima is throwing you remnants like a dog.
Like a dog, yeah.
How like you're maintaining. Of course, Bhima was not treating him like that.
Yeah.
And Vidura is very favorable to the Pandavas, but he was also had affection toward his half brother, Rashtra.
Yeah.
And so when he speaks those harsh words, and that startles Dhritarashtra, and he comes to his senses in the middle of the night without telling anyone, immediately leaves for the forest. And he says, okay, I don't want to waste whatever is. I made a big mess of my life, all my life, but now I should take it up. He goes to the forest, and he in Vedic culture they had some training, right? So he has learned how to perform some austerities, and so he meditated on the self, and he merged the sense of smell in water, and then he merged the sense of taste into fire or form, and in this way he eliminated the first two elements, and then he manifested a fire from his body, and then that fire consumed his body, and in trance he achieved transcendence. And then Gandhari was chased all her life, and she just entered the same fire, and then both of them achieved. So yeah, that is the whole idea. We have to gradually. That's why the example that I give is that the idea is not why do we need training wheels, but the training wheels after a certain point they become hindrance once you have learned how to balance, right? Same thing, varnashram is needed. Many times the devotees will they say that ultimate thing is Krishna consciousness. Yes, that's true. But when you cannot artificially give up one's prescribed duties, right? Which is what Arjuna was trying to do. And Krishna said, no, you're not ready, right? You have to perform your Kshatriya dharma. So yes, those guardrails are needed. The idea, but the one who is intelligent knows when to use them and when you don't need anymore, right? After the child knows how to ride a bike, then if you still keep the guardrails, they become dangerous. Now he's my son, he was driving when he learned. Now he knows how to drive. He's so fast. He wants to take a turn, and then what happens? When you take a turn, the bike kind of inclines, right? The training wheel will be an obstruction. You will fall down. So when one is ready and ripe, then one has to. That's why why Vanprastha ashram one is not engaged. The whole idea is we do everything right in brahmacharya and grihastha. By Vanprastha, the propensity to be engaged in some work or material engagement should automatically subside if we are doing things right.
Yeah.
Right. And then we don't need the guardrails. So yeah, varnashram is an instrument. It's not the ultimate thing, but it's still an instrument. We cannot artificially give it up either. So Bhakti Thakur says that we need that to bring us for gradual advancement. And many times, somebody counters argue. You say, well, can you sit and chant 12 hours a day, 24? Yeah, chanting Hare Krishna is the highest thing. Can we sit and do it? When we say we are ready, okay, then one can live up. There are examples when one have prematurely given up, their grihastha duties also, but that comes with a very high risk. Immediately take sannyas. They still have a wife, a child, but because now one is prematurely giving up. One has to be really ready in the sense, it's Shastra does not forbade that completely. It is allowed. But then one has to be extremely high level of transcendence. Otherwise, there are severe karmic reactions of not fulfilling one's obligations. So yeah, all those considerations have to be taken into account. Okay, does it make sense?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
So I have a question. So I've also in some of my reading, it's been like when you do a diya on a daily basis, that's also considered a small form of yajna. So I'm kind of curious when we talk about yajna in terms of giving back or offer or the gifts that you receive from the demigod, right, and then using them for the best purpose. I'm kind of curious about is diya really a type of yajna, or is it another form of focus? I'd love to kind of understand your thinking on that.
When we offer a lamp, right?
Yes.
It is also an offering. Yeah, that is true. So fire actually is one of the elements that purifies, right? When you offer it to the deities, we are, of course, the Lord does not need any purification, right? Just like Lord does not need any food, right? But we offer him bhoga for his enjoyment. So that is a question of rasa. By those rasas, we are trying to serve the Lordship. So lamp is one. Then we offer water, so water for bathing, which is argham. We put in a conch shell. Then we show it to the Lord as if we are bathing the Lord. And then then an actual abhishek is there where we bathe the Lord. Then we offer cloth, which is for wiping, dress the deities, then flowers, incense. So this is the entire process for arti, right? In the end, we offer fan, chamar. So in this way, that is also considered sacrifice, because it's higher than sacrifice, because we are the it's kind of related, right? Because when we are serving the Lord, we are sacrificing something for the pleasure of the Lord. Right? So it is a portion of it is an element, right? I mean, that's the right word, I guess. In arti, lamp is one of the things that is used, and arti also can be considered as a form of sacrifice. But the idea is the pleasure of the Lord, right? Now the question is, well, what are the other kind of sacrifices? In 4th chapter in detail, Krishna explains what are so many different kind of sacrifices, right? There are sacrifices which you can perform by mind. There are sacrifices of austerities. And it's very an amazing way Krishna explains. You would have never thought there is such a variety of sacrifices out there. And one who has taken up the spiritual path, and we want to be at that level where I was saying, right? Eventually, we want to fully engage in the service of the Lord. So all these different kind of sacrifices, according to our varna and ashram, they are prescribed, and it brings in all dimensions of sacrifices. So the more and more we engage in different dimensions of the sacrifices which are appropriate for our varna and ashram, we quickly overcome our desire for engagement in lower propensities, and so that ultimately we come to that platform of transcendence where we have no desire to be engaged in other material propensities, and one can fully take up Krishna consciousness 100%. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, so the reason I ask this, right, is there's two forms, and I kind of go look at my personal actions. When I was younger, I saw my grandmother and great grandmother do the prasad and the bhog and bathe, and we used to have baby Krishna in the temple and all this.
Right.
And then as I've gotten older, or as I was growing up, I always did diya, and I did it because my grandmother and my great grandmother had always done it, and I'd seen them do it, right? And now when I do it, it's with a very different feeling. So I'm trying to understand that jump where it starts off as kind of a custom that you follow, and at some point the real reason behind why you do kind of comes, and that realization comes much
Okay,
later.
I see what you say. Yeah. Yes. So now, if you're referring to the traditional practice, how our ancestors were doing, so that is direct devotional service, right? So now I see when you talk about karma yoga, jnana yoga, we have propensities to work, and what we are doing, we are actually dovetailing that in the service of Krishna, right? That's not necessarily a direct service. But eventually it could become a direct service, when one does it in an obligatory way for satisfaction of the Lord. But still the emotional dimension is not there, right? I mean, it is there, like, a Vaishya who is cultivating grains, they could have the consciousness that this grains, again, I'm going to cook it and offer it to the Lord, right? But when man is actually offering to the Lord, so that is direct devotional service. So Prahlad Maharaj, he in his conversation with his father Hiranyakashipu, who was an asur, and he sent him to his teachers who wanted his son to be trained as an asura. So he's saying, what did your teachers teach? What do you know is the highest principle of life? So he says, Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam Arshanam Mannam Dasyam Sakhyam Atma Nivedanam Iti Pumsar Pita Vishnu's Bhakti Chetanam Lakshana Karyate Bhakti Yadda Tad Manyate Adhikam Uttamam. This is 9 process he's saying. Shravanam, hearing, Kirtanam, glorifying, right? Which I have described earlier. Vishnu Smaranam, remembering. Pada Sevanam means, massaging the feet of the Lord. Arshanam, doing deity worship, right? So see, this is Arshanam. He says specifically. Right. So this 9 processes, right, in which one directly serves the Lord. Karyate Bhakti Adda, devotion. So this is now devotional service. Bhakti Adda. Tad Manyate Adhikam Uttamam. This is the highest form, right? So, that practices that we do at home in serving the deities, that is the direct service of the Lord, right? So that's what we aspire for. That's the ultimate perfection. But in the spirituality is such that the means and the end are the same, right? What is the end that we are seeking? That we should be able to do that in the spiritual world directly, offer bhoga to Krishna, right? We desire to do that directly, so that is the end goal. But what is the instrument to get there? We still do it to the deity form, which is not different than Krishna, right? So that is direct devotional service.
Yep.
Right now, the sacrifice is implicit in it, right? Because when we are offering, we need dravya, right? So, and then for that dravya, we probably have worked to get the money or the ingredients to be able to do it. So the sacrifice dimension is implicit in that, but the act itself is direct devotional service to the Lord.
Okay. Thank you. I think that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Verse number 17. Yastva atma ratirev syad atmatriptascha manavah atmani eva sa santustas tasya karyam na vidyate. But for one who takes pleasure in the self, did we already do this?
Yes, Prabhuji, we just finished that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I did not change to the next verse. Okay, verse number 18. Yeah, this is an important verse. Naiva tasya kritinartho na kriteneha kaschana na chasya sarva bhutesu kaschit artha vyapashrayah. Translation: a self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. So this is the final stage we are aspiring, right? But it's a gradual process. See, it's interesting, right? So when achieves perfection, there's no purpose, right? Because if there is no purpose to fulfill in discharge of prescribed duties, what are you trying to achieve? Nothing, right? Because he has no desire to get anything material. He's only interested in serving the Lord, right? But he has no reason to whimsically give up such work also, right? He says, okay, this is my duty, I'll do it, right? Right. Especially if there is as I say, they still have family obligations, they might continue to do it. And Bhishma Pitama, he had no family obligations also, right? But then, not that he did not even desire anything material. He had already given that promise that I won't get married because I have no interest in becoming the king. Because what was the objection of Satyavati's father? He's saying that, okay, you don't want to be the king. I will take your word. But what if your son, he might not be renounced. He might want to be the king. And then there will be direct competition between your son and Satyavati's son, right? Which is your half brother, which might be your half brother. And see, well, if that is your concern, then I won't get married, right? But he had given the vow to his father that, he will protect the kingdom. So he has no obligation, right? He's already perfectly situated in devotion to Krishna. But then he has no reason to, not perform such work. So he continued his duty. nor has he any need to depend on any other living being, because he knows that the Lord will maintain, right? So there's no other need. So now Krishna is trying to bring Arjuna to the point that what it really means to do it as a matter of duty without any obligation. Then he later will give example that, hey, I don't have anything to achieve, but still I am doing my prescribed duties because I am setting an example. And whatever the important personalities, those who are leaders of the society, those who are reputed, they are looked upon, and the common man will just simply imitate them. And if you don't set a good example, then the whole society will be in ruination. And then he says, I will be the cause of ruination if I did not follow my prescribed duties. In this way, in the subsequent verses, he explains that. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying a self-realized man is no longer obliged to perform any prescribed duties. Then what he will do? Well, accept activities in Krishna consciousness. See now, what does that mean? Well, this refers to those activities which I mentioned, which are direct service to the Lord, right? So Krishna consciousness is not inactivity either, right? It's not like that is already rejected earlier. Krishna says Indriya Arama. It's not a life of cozy living, right? Just comfortable living, little bhajan, little bhojan, not that. As will be explained in the following verses. The Krishna conscious man does not take shelter. He says we should not become burden on the society. And then when people say, oh, this spiritual people, they are lazy people, they don't want to do any work, and they are unnecessary burden to the society. Well, that's not the idea. That's why in the spiritual tradition, the sannyasi will say, and I'll go begging only 5 houses. If I get something, I'll take, otherwise I won't take. They might have even stricter rules. Some of them are said, I won't even go begging. I'll be at my bhajan kutir. Somebody will bring some food, I'll eat it, otherwise I won't eat it. That's called ajgar vritti. Python does not go out hunting. Python will remain in the swamp in the same location, doesn't go far. If some animal come, the python will swallow it. Otherwise, that's called ajgar vritti. So we can learn from even animals. So and then there are sannyasis will say, I'll go to the field, whatever after the harvest is done, whatever grains are left, because there's always some spillage. So I'll just take the spilled grains, either from the farm, the field, or on the road, because sometimes on the road when the carts are going, the grains fall down from the husk. Or you go to the shop, and after the shopkeeper is transferring the grains, whatever is left over, they would take. Of course, all these practices are not possible in the present world time, but the principle can be applied. The detail in application could change, but what we would understand is the principle. So that is for the renounced order of life, right? Those who are given up. So the idea again is that one, the spiritual person doesn't mean that they have to become a burden on the society. Why in the Vedic culture, someone beggar means a sannyasi. See, now begging has become a profession. In many cases, right? It has become profession. But begging really means it's an opportunity. It's the grihastha feels grateful that he's serving a sannyasi who is self-realized. It's difficult to find such person also, because the Babaji now, Babaji is also, they just take it as a profession. But the sannyasi, when he visits a home, he does not enter the home. He says from the door you give whatever, and then he will give some spiritual instruction, right? And then uplift people. So that was the whole idea. So he's not supposed to take shelter. So when a sannyasi is going and is asking this bhiksham dehi, is not dependent on anyone. He can, but he, under that pretext, a really self-realized person is supposed to go and give spiritual instruction, right? Not become a burden on the society. Whatever he does in Krishna consciousness is sufficient in discharge of his obligation, right? So no need to perform any other activities. This is a short purport. Any questions on this? Okay. Do the next verse. Let's see. Is it a big purport? I think we can do it. Okay. Verse number 19. Tasmad asakta satatam karyam karma samachara asakto hi acharam karma paramapnoti purushah. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains supreme. You see. So what does it mean when one comes to that platform, right, where one has no other engagement except serving the Lord, right? So how do we get there? We have to be trained. We have, you have to go through a training for many years, where we come to a platform where we have no other interest except to serve the Lord. So what is the process? That we have to slowly and gradually train us not to be attached, right? That means, we should not think of the fruits of activities. We should do it as a matter of duty. And that's why it is important that we pick up a activity according to one's nature. Because if you're not acting according to our nature, then it is what will propel us? Because many times people ask that how can one work without desire for the fruitive results? And their argument is correct. Later in 18th chapter, Krishna, I think he says that what is jnanam gayam parigyata trivida karma chodana. The impetus for working manifests when there are three things in place: the knower, that is the self, the object, then knowledge, and the object of knowledge. So rather the other way. So the object of knowledge, what we intend to achieve, that is object of knowledge. Then knowledge, that knowledge about that object, right? How to get it, why it is important, right? And the knower. When these three things are there, then one acts. So it's there, impetus is there, right? So unless we have that desire for the fruit, unless we have the knowledge of the fruits of activities, there won't be impetus to act, which is true. But because if we are engaged according to our nature, that the attraction for the fruits of the activities will eventually go away by law of diminishing returns. Then what will propel us? What will be propelled by our nature, right? So don't find your passion. What was that HBR article saying? You have to find your what was the word they used? Blisters. Yeah, pursue your blisters, not your passion. So propelling means whether I like it or not like it, whether I may be good at it or not good at it, I am propelled to act. I cannot stand it, So what will happen? Because our nature is propelling us, and eventually when the glamour or the glitter of the fruits of activities diminishes, of course we need something to maintain the body, but we're not seeking out. It just becomes something, a routine. Then one is able to act as a matter of duty. So that's why varnashram is very scientific. People don't understand the principles behind it. That's why there's a lot of confusion. But if you really question, why is it this way, right? You come to that understanding, it's for a reason that it's structured in that way. Then one will be able to act as a matter of duty. Why that's important? Then I'm now decoupling from the desires to enjoy. And when I have practiced all my life, and since I don't have that material propensities, then I'll come to the platform where I can attain supreme, and I'll be inclined to, also in the process, not only that attachment goes away, one cultivates jnana. Two things happening, right? This is vairagya. Vairagya means I'm not inclined by fruitive mentalities. I'm not propelled by fruitive mentalities. I'm propelled by my nature. That is vairagya. Renunciation will develop. And the jnana will come. Earlier, the jnana is not there. What is the jnana? That we are doing this for satisfaction of Vishnu. That knowledge will also be cultivated. So bhakti is a product of jnana and vairagya. Right? Real devotion will manifest by jnana and vairagya. You will find this in Bhagavatam, other places. They say, bhakti has to be supported by jnana and vairagya. So having practiced this half of our life, then one can come to the platform and attain the supreme, right? So because of jnana and vairagya, bhakti will manifest. So vairagya is, not being attached to the fruits, and then come to the proper understanding. Then why I'm doing it? Well, it's for satisfaction of Vishnu. I'm offering the results to the Lord, and then bhakti will manifest. The purport Srila Prabhupada is saying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme is the personality of Godhead, right? So who is the Supreme? Right? It's not something impersonal. And liberation for the impersonalist. Okay. So we say Prabhupada is taking an agnostic stand in the sense that, okay, even if you are an impersonalist who do not accept the personality of Godhead, then for you, Supreme means liberation. So there are some concepts in Bhagavad Gita for which, even if somebody has an impersonal understanding of the absolute truth, it does not change the relevance of the statement. So here Srila Prabhupada is saying, whatever your understanding of the Supreme is, right, this does not change. Right. So even Mayavadis, why they perform Varnashram? Traditionally, Mayavadis, impersonally, they also perform Varnashram duties because it's the performance of Varnashram will bring them to this level. Right. So there is no conflict, at least in this scenario. Person therefore acting for Krishna or in Krishna consciousness under proper guidance and without attachment to the result of work is certainly making progress towards the supreme goal. You see, such an important concept. How is making the progress? I explained you. Jnana and Vairagya. Right? So this is Vairagya. And then understanding what is the goal of life, that is Jnana. Arjuna is told that he should fight in the battle of Kurukshetra for the interest of Krishna. Because Krishna wanted to fight. So that is Jnana. What is the real reason I am fighting? To be a good non-violent man is a personal attachment. Right? So Krishna is saying that if you're going against your nature, you're trying to be a non-violent man, but you have your own whimsical reasons why you want to do it. Or even if it is not whimsical, you have your own attachment, right? Personal attachment towards his grandfather and his teacher in case of Arjuna. But to act on behalf of Supreme is to act without attachment for the result. And not thinking, oh, I will not be able to enjoy even if I win, because with those whom I would like to celebrate my victory would be all dead. So this is a personal consideration. That is a perfect action of the highest degree recommended by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Vedic rituals like prescribed sacrifices are performed for purification of impious activities that were performed in the field of sense gratification. Right? So as I say, remnants of any sacrifices, they become automatically pure. Right? Just like fire purifies everything. So similarly, the acts of yajna, they purify all activities. The Vedic ritual like prescribed sacrifices are performed for purification of impious activities that were performed in the field of sense gratification. Here, what it means, what does it mean? See, if you try to unpack the statement, there could be a lot of things. See, one keyword is impious, and then there is sense gratification. Yeah, so initially the sense gratification might be there, right, which I have explained it so many times. Right? But then gradually it's purified because we are forcing our consciousness. Even if the desire is there, no, let Krishna enjoy first, I'll take the remnant. So that is getting purified. The other question is, what does this mean by impious activities? You have to understand in what context is said. It doesn't mean that we do sinful activities and offer the results to the Lord. That's not what it means. Right? Because this could be misinterpreted. Otherwise, why the whole idea of one has to perform? There is no question of prescribed duties or prescribed sacrifices. Prescribed means you have to go according to rules and regulations. And if you go to according to the rules and regulations, there is no question of engaged in sinful activities and offering that results to the Lord as sacrifice. So then what does impious mean over here? Well, impious, what it means is that any activity that we perform has some defects. In 18th chapter, Krishna will explain that just like fire, which provides heat and light, which is desirable, it also provides smoke. So all activities are covered by fault, just like fire is covered by smoke. Similarly, so it's like I given this example earlier. Vaishya, he has to speak some lie to do some business, right? Prabhupada gives the example that my sir, just for you, I do not make any profit. Never even knows that One cannot do business without profit. So he's definitely making profit, but he has to say some lies, right? A Kshatriya in the process has to commit violence, sometimes, to keep their martial skills up to date, and they might engage in hunting, right? So but it is impious, you're killing animal, but because one is engaged according to that nature, one's nature, that is overlooked, and whatever faults there might be, because the results are offered to the Lord, then that activity is purified. So the basic criteria for, then somebody might question, well, how can it be offered to the Lord? Well, all activities will have some fault, right? So that is the first understanding. You cannot have a completely faultless activity. Then how come it can be worthy of offering to the Lord? Then the criteria for being worthy for offering to the Lord is that it has to be done according to our nature, right? I've given this example earlier. If we go and, if there's an occasion where maybe a wedding or someone's birthday, we go and give a gift. Maybe not a close friend, but just an acquaintance. But if you don't have an emotional connection with that person, we're just doing it because we want to get something out of that person, right? We have some other motivation, and it does not come out. Even if we do pretense, somebody can sense it, right? Or sometimes people get nervous, especially if that person is very powerful, person, has a position in the society, or we try to fit into a society. Maybe this is maybe someone from a very from a higher economic strata, and we are maybe overdressed. We don't know, we never attended that kind of social gathering, right? Everything about that action is unnatural, right? And then others can sense it. Similarly, when we are offering something to Krishna just wants us to be, situated in our nature, and that he's happy, right? Like a child, would 4 or 5 year child, he says, oh, today's daddy's birthday, but he does not remember. Somebody has to remind. Maybe the mother reminds that today is daddy's birthday. Oh, today is daddy's birthday. I want to give something, right? And he says, how am I going to give? Well, I don't have anything. So you come and ask daddy, daddy, can you give me, a gift that I want to gift it to you, right? Or he might say, give me a piece of paper. I want to, make a birthday card, right? And say, I don't know how to spell. Can you help me spell? But the thing is, the child is just doing naturally, though he is taking all the help and, in it, but it is pleasing to the father, right? So similarly, when we are engaged according to our nature, even if we have defects, like child had so many defects, does not know the birthday, right? And needs help in even, but getting a gift. But what else you can expect from a child? The child is naturally situated, and that is pleasing to the Lord, right? So similarly, when we are engaged according to our nature, that is worthy of offering to the Lord, though it might have some defects, okay? Because all activities would have some defects. But action in Krishna consciousness is transcendental to the reactions of good or evil. Because it's done with a Krishna conscious mood, all those reactions are burned. So Krishna conscious person has no attachment for the result, but acts for the behalf of Krishna alone. He engages in all kind of activities, but is completely non-attached. So here also, when he says all kind of activities, again, it doesn't mean sinful activities, and it also means activities according to one's prescribed varna and ashram. Within that context, all activities. That's what it means. Okay. Any questions? I think we are already up on the time, but if there are any questions I could take, also we'll continue next time. So we did 4 verses. Did we do? Or 3 verses? 16, 17, 18, 19, 3 verses. Okay. Or 4 verses. Okay. Looks like there are no more questions. We'll conclude the class. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.